Something has me. Not German, not wire. Hands, cold hands, pulling me down. I can see faces in the water. They're drowning. They want. Private James Caulfield, British 34th Division, July 3rd, 1916. The Somme. His body was never recovered, but 5 men watched what took him. The Somme, northern France. Summer 1916. The trenches filled with water, knee-deep, waist-deep, deeper. Men drowned here, not from bullets, not from gas or shells. They drowned standing in the trenches they defended. Official cause, drowned. Circumstances unknown. But the soldiers knew. The men in Sector 34 knew. Something was in the water, in the flooded craters, in the mud-choked trenches, pulling them down, and it's been pulling ever since. July 3rd, 1916, Sector 34, near Thiepval Wood, 3 days after the big push. The attack had failed. 20,000 British soldiers dead in a single day. The survivors fell back to the trenches and waited. In Sector 34, 5 men stood knee-deep in water, bailing. Private James Caulfield, 23 years old, Manchester. Factory worker before the war. Now he worked a hand pump in a flooded trench, moving water that would return by morning. With him, Corporal Davies from Wales, coal miner, always joking. Private Tommy Wilson from London, former clerk, letter from his wife folded in his pocket. Private Robert Hughes, Scottish farmhand, teaching the others drinking songs to pass the time. And Lance Corporal James Fletcher, Yorkshire blacksmith, practical man, carried a photo of his daughter. They'd been pumping for 6 hours, and the water never dropped. Davies wiped his face. At least in the mines, the walls don't shoot back. Wilson didn't look up from his pump. "You miss it that much, Davies? I'll bury you myself." Hughes started singing, voice low. "Oh, the water's cold and the mud runs deep, but we'll bail until we sleep." Fletcher cut him off. "Save your breath, lads. Officers are watching." They worked, they joked, they survived. The water kept rising. By nightfall, something changed. They'd been pumping all day. The water should have dropped, even an inch. Something. Instead, it rose. Caulfield straightened, hands aching. "We've been at this for hours. Where's it all coming from?" Davies shrugged. "Ground saturated. Rain last week. Chalk can't absorb it." Wilson stopped pumping. Then why is it getting colder? He was right. The water was colder than it had been at dawn. That wasn't natural. Water warmed during the day, cooled at night. This was backwards. And there was a smell. Not the usual trench smell of death and latrine and unwashed men. Something else. Older. Stagnant. Caulfield noticed the mud first. It moved. "You seeing this? The water?" Hughes looked over. "What about it?" "Watch the surface. There. You see it?" Ripples. Small ones, spreading outward from the center of the trench. But there was no wind. No one had moved. The water should have been still. Davies leaned on his pump. Probably rats. Big as cats down here. Hughes shook his head. "Rats don't make the water colder, mate." Wilson grabbed his rifle. "Let's just keep bailing. I don't like this." None of them did. But the war didn't care what you liked. Night fell. They lit lamps and kept working. The water kept rising. And something in the water kept moving. Caulfield took first watch. Midnight. The others rested against the trench wall, trying to sleep in wet boots. He stood in the water, rifle ready, watching the darkness beyond the parapet. That's when he felt it. Something brushed against his leg. Not debris, not equipment floating by. This was deliberate, purposeful, like fingers trailing across his calf. He looked down. The water was black. Couldn't see through it. Reached down, felt for whatever it was. Nothing. Then the grip came. Pressure on his ankle. Unmistakable. A hand. He could feel individual fingers. Cold, waterlogged, the skin soft, deteriorated, but the grip strong, like steel wrapped in wet leather. "Davies, get over here." Davies stirred, groggy. "What's wrong?" "Something touched me, something with hands." Davies waded over, lamp raised. "I don't see anything, mate. You sure you didn't?" He stopped. "Wait, I feel it too." Both men stood frozen. Something moved between them underwater. Not one thing, several. Wilson woke. "What's going on?" Hughes sat up. "Why are you both just standing there?" Caulfield's voice was tight. "There's something in the water with us." Wilson and Hughes splashed over. 4 men now, standing close, lamps raised. All of them felt it. Things moving around their legs, brushing past, circling, intelligent, deliberate. Hughes backed toward the wall. "What the hell is this?" Wilson raised his rifle. "We need to get out. Now." Davies grabbed Caulfield's arm. "It's got Caulfield's leg. I can feel it. It's..." The water exploded. Caulfield was jerked downward, violently. No warning. One moment standing, the next on his knees, water to his chest. He screamed. "Something has me. Pull me up." Davies grabbed his arm. Wilson his other arm. Hughes his shoulder. 3 men pulling. It wasn't enough. "There's hands, multiple hands. They're pulling." Davies strained. "We've got you." Wilson's boots slipped in the mud. "I can't. It's too strong. They're cold, dead cold." Hughes threw his weight back. "Pull, pull." Fletcher heard the screaming, came running with his lamp. "What the hell's..." He saw them struggling, raised his lamp high, held it over the water, and he saw pale arms beneath the surface, British uniform sleeves, multiple figures submerged and holding Caulfield, pulling him down with methodical, terrible strength. Fletcher's voice broke. "Oh God, oh Jesus Christ." Caulfield was still screaming. "I can see faces, in the water, British soldiers, they're drowning." Fletcher dropped to his knees, grabbed Caulfield too. 4 men pulling now. The tug of war was impossible. Whatever held him shouldn't have this strength. They want me to..." Davies' voice cracked. "Don't let go. Tell my wife, tell her I..." He went under, just like that. One moment they were holding him, the next he was gone. Ripped from their hands. The water swallowed him. Silence. The 4 men stood there, breathing hard, staring at the water. It was perfectly still, like nothing had happened. They dug, frantically, hands in the mud, searching, while pulling up fistfuls of nothing. Fletcher grabbed his lamp, plunged it under the water, held it down, looked into the murk, and he saw James Caulfield, 5 feet down, not sinking, not floating, being held, arms around him, multiple arms, uniformed figures in the mud, British soldiers, weeks dead, waterlogged, but aware. And Caulfield's eyes were open, staring up at Fletcher, terrified, but not moving, not struggling, just staring. Fletcher screamed, dropped the lamp, fell backwards. "He's down there. They've got him." Davies moved toward the water. "We have to get him. We can't just..." Wilson pulled him back. "He's gone, mate. He's gone." Hughes was already climbing out. "We need to leave, right now." "We can't leave him." A voice came from the darkness. "What's the commotion?" The sergeant appeared. Older man. 15 years service. I've seen everything. except his face said he'd seen this before. Davy spoke first, words tumbling out. "Caulfield's in the water. Something pulled him. We tried to—" Wilson stepped forward. "There were hands, Sergeant. We all felt them." Hughes pointed at the water. "British soldiers, dead ones, they—" Fletcher was still staring at the spot where he'd seen Caulfield. "I saw them. I saw them holding him." The sergeant looked at each man, then at the water. His expression didn't change. "You saw them?" Not a question, a statement. "Get your kit. You're transferring to B section. Tonight." Davy's voice rose. "But Caulfield—" The sergeant's tone was flat. "Caulfield's not the first. Won't be the last. We don't go in the water at night anymore. Now you know why." Fletcher turned to face him. "You knew? You knew this was happening?" "I know we're at war. I know men die. And I know there are things in those flooded sectors that don't care which side you're on. Now move, before it takes someone else." They moved. They left their equipment, left their posts, scrambled out of that trench and didn't look back. Behind them, the water was still. And somewhere beneath it, Private James Caulfield's body settled into the mud. Official cause of death recorded the next morning. Drowned. Circumstances unknown. His body was never recovered, but the 4 men who watched him die knew exactly where it was, and they knew he wasn't alone down there. Dawn broke over Sector 34. The water was still. The sergeant sat in the company office, filling out the casualty report. His handwriting was steady. He'd done this before. Name: Private J. Caulfield, 34th Division. Status: missing, presumed drowned. Date of incident: July 3, 1916, 2200 hours. Location: Sector 34, forward trench. Witnesses: 4. All present, all interviewed. Body recovery: negative. Cause: drowned. Circumstances unknown. He signed it, blotted the ink, set it aside. Everything he'd written was true, just not the whole truth. Some Captain Richard Morrison read the report in his tent, read it twice, set it down on his desk, looked up at the sergeant standing at attention. "This is the 3rd one this month." "Yes, sir." "Same circumstances?" The sergeant's jaw tightened. "Yes, sir. And the men saw them clearly this time." Morrison's expression didn't change. "Did they now?" Silence hung between them. Morrison tapped the report. "Transfer them. Different sectors. Split them up if you have to." "Already done, sir." A brief nod of approval. Then Morrison's voice dropped. "And Sergeant? No mention of this in the daily log." The sergeant hesitated. "Sir, the men's families—" Morrison cut him off. "Will be told their son drowned, which is true. Cause unknown, also true." The sergeant said nothing. Dismissed. The sergeant left. Morrison sat alone in the lamplight. He opened his desk drawer, pulled out a folder, opened it. Inside, casualty reports, all stamped confidential. July 2nd, Private Anderson, drowned, body not recovered. July 2nd, Corporal Matthews, drowned. Where witnesses report, something pulled him. July 3rd, Lance Corporal Price, drowned. Hands in the water. July 4th, July 5th, July 6th, July 8th, July 10th, 8 names, 8 men, all drowned in waterlogged sectors, all at night, all describing the same thing. Hands, British uniforms, being pulled down. Morrison added Caulfield's report to the stack. 9 now. He closed the folder, filed it in the drawer, locked it. Then he pulled out his private journal, opened to a blank page, began to write. July 3rd, 1916. Lost another man to the water today. Private Caulfield. The men say they see British soldiers in the mud. Dead men. Walking, holding the living, pulling them down. I don't know what's happening in those sectors. Command says continue operations. But I know this. We're not fighting the Germans alone anymore. Something else is in those trenches. Something that doesn't distinguish between sides. It just takes. How do I tell the families? How do I explain this to anyone? He closed the journal, sat in the dark. Outside, the first work details were forming up. New day, same war. Word spread anyway. Officers couldn't stop it. Men talked, in whispers, in the dark, when the sergeants weren't listening. The drowned ones. That's what they called them. Dead British soldiers in the water. Waiting. Watching. Pulling men down to join them. Some refused night patrols in the flooded sectors. Officers reassigned them quietly. Didn't force it. Couldn't afford to shoot men for refusing to stand in cursed water. An unofficial policy emerged. Avoid sectors 34, 41, and 47 after dark. But the war didn't stop. Men still needed those positions. New troops arrived who didn't know. Didn't believe the stories. Not until they felt the hands. By August, the count in those 3 sectors alone, 15 men. Official cause of death, drowned. Circumstances unknown, bodies not recovered. And still the water kept rising. The Somme, July 1916. Why so much water? The ground itself was the problem. Chalk bedrock, porous, but only to a point. Rain soaked in slowly, drained slower. The land had always been wet. Farmers knew it, avoided the low areas, built their villages on high ground. Then came the armies and the artillery. Thousands of tons of explosives, day after day, pulverizing the earth. Every shell that hit created a crater. Every crater filled with water. The drainage systems the land depended on shattered. Underground springs surfaced. The chalk couldn't absorb it all. Then came the rain. July 1916 saw the heaviest rainfall in decades. Day after day, week after week, the trenches, designed for dry Mediterranean campaigns, couldn't handle it. Water poured in faster than pumps could remove it. Some trenches were knee-deep, some waist-deep, some men drowned standing up. Trench foot became epidemic. Men's feet rotted inside their boots. The cold water, the constant wet, the inability to ever get dry. Medical officers amputated toes by the dozen, sometimes whole feet. But that was just infection, just disease. That the soldiers could understand. What they couldn't understand were the drownings. Official count by August 1916. 47 men drowned in the Somme trenches. Not from enemy action, not from being wounded and falling in. Just drowned, standing in water, disappearing, bodies not recovered. Sectors 34, 41, and 47 had the worst numbers. All in the same area, low ground near Thiepval Wood, ground that had been wetland before the war. The French civilians in the nearby villages had warned them, don't dig there, don't build there. The water takes. L'eau qui prend, they called it. The water that takes. Old stories, centuries old, about men who went into certain marshes and never came out, about pale hands reaching from the water, about the drowned who don't rest. The British engineers ignored them. Superstitious peasants. This was modern warfare. Science, artillery, strategy. The water didn't care about science. It took men anyway. And by July 1916, the water wasn't just in the marshes anymore. It was everywhere. In the craters, in the trenches, in the communication lines. Standing water, stagnant, cold. And in certain sectors, in certain trenches, something else was in the water too. Something that had been there long before the war. Something the shells had woken up. July 17th, 1916. 2 weeks after Caulfield disappeared, Sergeant William Price didn't believe in ghosts. 15 years in the Army, fought in the Boer War, seen men die in every way imaginable. Bullets, disease, accidents, bad luck. He'd seen it all. And he'd heard the stories, the drowned ones. Dead British soldiers in the water, pulling men down to join them. Superstition, men cracking under the strain, trauma making them see things that weren't there. Price was a practical man, coal miner's son from Durham, believed in what he could see, touch, measure. The war was hell enough without inventing monsters. That was before Sector 41. His section drew pump duty. 6 men, hand pumps, impossible task. Clear a flooded communication trench. Essential supply route. Had to be passable by morning, and the water was chest deep in places. Black, couldn't see the bottom. They'd been at it for 3 hours. The water never dropped. It was like pumping the ocean. Private Davies stopped, breathing hard. "Sarge, there's something in the water." Price looked up. "What kind of something?" "Looks like a body, floating." Price waded over. Something dark bobbing near the surface. Could be German, could be British. Couldn't tell from this distance. "Pull it up." Could be intel on the body. 3 men moved to grab it. Reached down, got hold of it. The body grabbed back. Davies went under. Fast. 1 second reaching for the corpse, the next yanked below the surface. No scream, no warning, just gone. Price and the others lunged forward, grabbed Davies' arms as he thrashed. Something had him. Something pulling from below with terrible strength. "Pull, now." They pulled. Whatever had Davies wasn't letting go. Price made a decision. He went under, opened his eyes in the murky water. It burned. The water was filthy, contaminated. But he needed to see. And he saw. Not one figure. Many. Standing on the trench floor. British uniforms, all of them. Weeks dead. Some longer. Waterlogged faces, skin pale and bloated. Eyes clouded but aware. Looking at him. One had Davies. Arms around his chest, pulling him down. But there were others. 6, 7, 8 of them. Standing in formation like they were still on duty. Waiting. Price surfaced, gasping. "Pull him now." The others obeyed, hauling with everything they had. Price dove again, grabbed Davies under the arms, kicked at the thing holding him. His boot connected with something solid. Dead flesh, waterlogged, but still there. The grip loosened. They pulled Davies free. The resistance vanished suddenly, like whatever held him decided to let go. Not forced. Chosen. Davies flew backward, coughing water, gasping. Price looked down into the murk. They were still there, standing just below the surface, watching. One of them raised its arm, slowly, deliberately, not threatening, beckoning. "Come down. Join us." Price scrambled back, pulling Davies with him. "Out, everyone out, now." They climbed from the trench, abandoned the pumps. Didn't care about orders, didn't care about the supply route. Better to face German bullets than what was in that water. Price looked back from the parapet. The water was still, perfectly calm. But he knew they were down there. He'd counted them, a minimum 8. Maybe more in the deeper sections he couldn't see. All British, all dead, all aware. And one of them wore a patch he recognized. 34th Division. His division. A man who drowned 3 weeks ago. Private Henley. Fell into a crater during a night patrol. Body never recovered. Now Price knew where he was. Still down there. Still in the water. still on duty. Davies was shaking, bruises forming on his arms and chest. Price examined them. Handprints, multiple sets. 6, maybe 8 different hands had held him. How many were there, Sarge? Price didn't answer right away. Couldn't quite believe what he was about to say. Too many. But you saw them. I saw them. Silence between them. They're British, aren't they? Our boys. Price nodded. Our boys. Another silence, and Davies' voice was small. Why did they let me go? Price had been wondering the same thing. They'd had Davies. 4 men pulling couldn't break that grip. Then suddenly, release. Like they chose to let him live. I don't know. Maybe they weren't ready for you yet. The thought made it worse somehow. That there was intention, choice, that they were waiting for the right moment. Price reported to Captain Morrison, same captain who'd taken Caulfield's report. Morrison listened without interrupting. When Price finished, Morrison didn't look surprised. Sector 41? Yes, sir. Abandon it. Mark it flooded, impassable. Sir, there are at least 8 of them down there, maybe more. We need to... Morrison cut him off. You need to forget what you saw, Sergeant. And that's an order. But sir, this is the 4th report this week. Morrison's voice was flat, exhausted. The 4th. Do you understand? You're not the first. You won't be the last. Price understood. This was bigger than one incident, bigger than one sector. Dismissed. On that night, Price sat in his dugout, couldn't sleep, kept seeing those faces underwater, those eyes tracking him. He pulled out his diary, private journal, not official, wrote by candlelight. July 17th, 1916. We pulled Davies from the water today. Something had him. Not something. Someone's. I went under. I saw them. British soldiers. Dead. Drowned. But not gone. They were standing in the water like it was their post now. Like they're waiting for relief that won't come. Counted at least 8. All in uniform. All weeks dead. One wore our division patch. Private Henley. Drowned 3 weeks back. Still down there. They could have kept Davies. I felt their strength. 4 of us pulling couldn't match it. But they let him go. Like they were choosing. God help us. The Germans aren't our only enemy here. He closed the diary, blew out the candle, sat in the dark. Outside, the rain continued. The water kept rising, and in Sector 41 and Sector 34 and Sector 47, they were waiting, standing in the water, watching for the next man to come close enough, patient. They had all the time in the world. They were already dead. The British soldiers weren't the first to see something in the water. The French had known for centuries. Marie Dubois, age 67 in 1916. Her family had farmed the land near Thiepval for 200 years, lived through the Franco-Prussian War, watched the Germans come, watched them go, thought she'd seen everything. Then the British arrived, started digging trenches right through the old wetlands, the places her grandmother had warned her about, the places no one went after dark. She tried to tell them. A British officer came to requisition her farmland, needed it for supply depots. She told him through an interpreter, "Don't dig in the low ground. Don't build near the water." He asked why. She told him, "L'eau qui prend, the water that takes." He laughed, thanked her for her concern. Superstitious peasants, he probably thought. And this was modern warfare. Science, artillery, progress. They dug anyway. After the war, in 1920, French authorities interviewed the surviving locals, documenting the damage. the losses, trying to understand what happened. Marie Dubois gave her testimony. It was archived in the French National Archives, filed away, forgotten, until researchers found it decades later. We warned the British soldiers, but they didn't listen. We told them, don't go in the water after dark. They laughed, said we were superstitious peasants, but we knew. Our grandmothers knew. Their grandmothers knew. The water here, it takes. It always has. Since before France was France, since before the Romans came, there are places where the drowned don't rest, where the water holds them, and they wait, and they pull others down to join them. The interviewer asked, "What kind of stories?" Marie's answer was recorded in the archive. "My grandmother told me about 3 pilgrims, 1347. They were crossing the marshland on their way to the cathedral, disappeared in the water. Witnesses said hands came up from below. Pale hands pulled them under. The priest warned everyone after that. Avoid the wetlands. The drowned keep their own company there." In 1523, another incident. A child, playing too close to the water. Mother swears she saw her pulled, not by accident, by hands reaching up. 1689, 2 men cutting peat. Never came home. Villagers found their tools by the water's edge. Nothing else. Always the same story. The water, the hands, people disappearing. And we built our village on high ground for a reason. The interviewer asked one more question. What did she think happened during the war? Marie Dubois was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "When the shells started falling, I knew. All that death, all that blood, all that water filling the craters. My grandmother told me, the more who drown, the stronger it gets. The more hands reaching up. The British didn't create this, but they fed it. They woke it up, made it hungry, and it's been taking ever since." Marie Dubois died in 1928, age 79. Lived long enough to see the cemeteries built, the memorials, the tourists starting to come. She never went near the old battlefield, never walked the preserved trenches. Her daughter inherited the farm, sold it, moved to Paris, said she couldn't sleep there anymore. Too many sounds at night, sounds from the water. Her granddaughter visited once, 1965. Stood at the edge of Sector 34, looked at the crater, still filled with water 49 years later, left immediately, never returned. Her great-granddaughter was interviewed in 2018 by a local historian. Asked if she'd ever visited the battlefield. She said no. Asked why not. My great-grandmother Marie told my grandmother, who told my mother, who told me, "Stay away from the water. It still takes." I'm not going to be the one who proves her wrong. The water in those craters hasn't drained in over a century. Engineers studied it in the 1990s. No geological reason for it. Water table isn't that high. Soil should drain. It doesn't. Like something's holding it there. Like something needs it. August 1916, 1 month after the big push failed. Lieutenant Charles Moss, 24 years old, Cambridge educated, philosophy and classics, officer class, gentleman. He'd heard the enlisted men's stories, the drowned ones, dead soldiers in the water, ghosts pulling men down. Nonsense, trauma, shell shock manifesting as superstition. In a letter home to his mother, dated August 5th, he wrote, "The men are good lads, mother, but prone to wild tales. I suspect the rum ration is too generous. They speak of phantoms in the water as if such things were real. One must make allowances for their limited education and the strain they endure." 2 weeks later, he would write her again. The second letter was very different. August 19th. Night reconnaissance. Check German wire, estimate their defenses. A report back. Moss went alone. Officer's duty, officer's pride. He'd show the men there was nothing to fear but Germans and bullets. The route took him past a flooded crater, 30 yards across, water black as oil, moonlight reflecting off the surface like a mirror. He circled it, taking notes. German positions, wire density, gaps in their line, movement in his peripheral vision. He looked up. Men standing in the water, center of the crater, not swimming, not floating, standing, water to their shoulders, British uniforms visible above the surface, rifles still strapped to their backs, helmets still on their heads, completely still. Moss assumed they were lost, perhaps disoriented, gas attack victims wandering in shock. He called out, "You there, identify yourselves." No response, no movement. "This is Lieutenant Moss. Are you wounded? Do you require assistance?" Nothing. He moved closer. 10 yards, 5 yards, near enough to see their faces in the moonlight. Something was wrong. Their skin, too pale. Even in moonlight, too white. Waxy. Bloated. He stopped. Are you all right?" One of them moved, not toward shore, not struggling, downward. It sank beneath the surface, deliberately, smoothly, like descending stairs. Gone. Then another, and another. All of them sinking down, not drowning. Descending, until all were gone. The water went still. Moss stood at the edge, frozen, his rational mind trying to make sense of what he'd just seen. A flare went up. German. Far away. But enough light. He looked down into the water. They were still there, standing on the crater bottom, 15 feet down, looking up at him through the water. One raised its arm, slowly, deliberately, beckoning. "Come down. Join us." The flare died. Darkness. Moss ran. He made it back to the British line, shaking, pale, could barely speak. The sergeant asked if he was wounded. Moss shook his head, sat down, put his head in his hands. Finally, "I saw them." "Saw who, sir?" "The drowned ones. The men weren't lying. I saw them." That night, he wrote to his mother. The letter still exists, archived in the Manchester Central Library. His family donated it after his death. "Dear Mother, I must ask your forgiveness for my previous dismissal of your warnings about the spiritual realm. You always said there were things in this world beyond our understanding. I mocked you for it. I was wrong. I have seen things here that cannot be explained by science or reason. I saw dead men standing in water. Standing, not floating, not drowning, standing beneath the surface, looking at me, watching me. They wanted me to join them. I know this sounds mad. I know what you must think reading this. But I am not mad. I am terrified. I have requested transfer to a different sector. Any sector, so long as it's dry. I cannot go near water anymore. I simply cannot. Your loving son, Charles." The transfer was granted. Immediately. Moss spent the rest of the war in the chalk hills. Dry ground, no trenches, no water. He survived. Returned to England in 1918. Went back to Cambridge. Finished his degree. Became a teacher. Philosophy. Lived quietly. Never spoke of what he saw. Not publicly. Only in private letters to his mother and in his journal, both of which he preserved carefully. When he died in 1962, age 70, his will contained a specific request. His letters and journal were to be donated to the Manchester Central Library archives, made available to researchers. He wrote, "So that others might know the truth, so that when they hear the stories from the trenches, they might believe the men who were there. We saw things, real things, and we deserve to be believed." The archive still holds his papers. The letter dated August 19, 1916 is there, along with a sketch he drew in his journal. Men standing underwater, arms raised, beckoning. He titled it, "What I Saw at the Somme." And underneath, in his careful handwriting, they are still there. Three encounters, three different men, three identical stories. Private Caulfield, enlisted, young, pulled under by multiple hands, 4 witnesses. Body never recovered. Sergeant Price, veteran, skeptic, went underwater, saw them clearly. 8 figures, British uniforms, standing, waiting. Lieutenant Moss, officer, educated, dismissed the stories, then saw them standing in water, beckoning. All described the same thing. British soldiers, dead, drowned, but not gone, not resting, standing in the water, aware, watching, choosing who to take. The pattern was undeniable, and it wasn't just them. By September 1916, official drowning count in sectors 34, 41, and 47. 63 men, bodies not recovered. French folklore going back centuries. Same locations, same phenomenon. Marie Dubois warned them. They didn't listen, and the evidence was overwhelming. Testimonies, documents, diaries, letters, sketches, all saying the same thing. Something in the water, something that takes. The Somme, a battlefield today, a memorial site, preserved trenches, museums, thousands of visitors every year. Most areas are safe, respectful, educational. But certain sections remain closed, fenced off, warning signs. Official reason, unstable ground, flood risk. Ask the tour guides. Quietly, when no one else is listening. They won't go there. Not at night. Not alone. The water in those old craters hasn't drained, not in over a century. Engineers studied it in the 1990s, tried to explain it. Geology, water table, soil composition, nothing fit. The water should drain. It doesn't. Like something's holding it there. And June 2019, British tourist, male, age 34, crossed the barrier fence, unauthorized, wanted a closer look at the crater, got too close to the edge, felt something grab his ankle, his words, pulled toward the water, fell, injured his knee. Park rangers found him, pulled him away. Medical examination, bruising on ankle. Finger marks. He insisted to paramedics. Someone grabbed me. I felt hands. Security footage reviewed. No one else in the area. October 2021. French student, female, age 22. Photography project. WWI memorial sites. Night shoot. Violated park rules. Went to old sector 34 after dark. Recording audio for her project. The audio file exists. You can find it online. Bubbling sounds, moaning, underwater. Clear as day. She ran, left her camera. Rangers found it the next morning. Battery dead. One photo remained. Still water in the crater. No wind that night. But ripples, spreading outward from the center. And something pale, just beneath the surface. Could be reflection. Could be algae. Could be something else. Of Park Ranger, anonymous interview, 2023, 15 years working the Somme memorials. His testimony: we don't patrol those areas after dark. Official policy. Why? Officially, it's safety. Unstable ground. Unofficially, we've all heard things. Sounds from the water, like breathing, like someone trying to surface. One ranger quit last year. Said he saw someone standing in the crater. 3 a.m., full British uniform, walked into the water, disappeared. We don't talk about it, but we know. Whatever the soldiers saw in 1916, it's still there. Marie Dubois was right. The water takes. It always has. It still does. The evidence spans a century. medieval church records, French testimony, British military documents, officer letters, enlisted diaries, medical reports, modern incidents, ranger accounts, all consistent, all describing the same thing, and all pointing to the same conclusion. Those men didn't just drown, they were taken. And they're still down there, still in the water, still waiting. If you enjoy this story, subscribe, like, and put on notifications.